So I think what I would want to do is talk about how memory works, how emotional memory and memory in general works, and that actually we have a RIM collaborative book coming out next September. That's the title is Your Kaleidoscope Mind, and what we know now from the latest neuroscience about memory is that every time you have some level of memory about a certain kind of experience, it gets altered. It's kind of like a kaleidoscope. Every time you take a look, it turns just a little bit. And things shift around and change, but now this is the new memory. And you're no longer aware that it's not accurate anymore as to the very beginning. And that continues. So that, what we know now is what feels really as accurate memory, at least 30% of the time is not. But it is, if you're not testifying in a trial, then it's more personal, then that's fine. It's not a problem. And the reason when we're using RIM, it's not a problem, we're not concerned about what's actual. The REM experience is for healing what the psyche brings forth as needing to be healed. So if it's an actual experience or not may not be actually known. And this is really useful because we're not doing REM to determine truth for a trial. We are only doing it for healing. And the psyche, in our experience, my experience over 30 years of doing sessions, is I totally trust the unconscious ability to be purposeful and bring up what is the most perfect place and time and image that's going to help address and heal whatever the intention was. It is not a linear straight line to that. So for instance, let me give you an example. This was a student at the time, a certification student from Boulder, was doing a session with a young filmmaker who was complaining that his company wasn't growing because he didn't feel comfortable delegating to others the work. And so in his session, the memory he went back to was as a 6-year-old going fishing with his dad. And he had his dad's expensive fishing pole and lost it in the river. And so his dad got very mad and said, I have to do everything myself. And as the young man was in his session remembering this, of course, he was very hurt. And that memory of disappointing dad being a wound anchored as I have to do it myself. And in that session, he was, of course, able to have an imaginary dialogue with his dad. And his dad, of course, was very, very sad and sorry that this had stuck with him and held him back in some way. So there was this interpersonal coming together. What was really interesting is what was very significant was that his dog showed up as a virtual resource, and his dog from that time. And oh my gosh, I get goosebumps because the energy of it was so strong just reading about it, that having his dog there, like that, unconditional love of his dog was so powerful for him to remember that, having been loved in that way, that at the end of the session, he said, I don't know, how this connects to me being able to delegate now, but boy, I feel loved up by my dog, and of course my dad too. And can I take my dog with me? That memory, can I take that with me as I go back into my life? And of course, yes, it's yours, and you can remember it anytime you want to. And even if it's every morning and every night, that a virtual resource can be with us no matter what. This is our virtual resource. It's our image of that virtual resource. But what happened with Anita, who was the student facilitator, she got a call about, I think she said it was a month to 2 months afterwards, from the person who had referred this young filmmaker, and this person said, "What did you do to him? He is so different. He now is delegating. His company has doubled in size almost, even has a girlfriend because he can take time off. He can actually have a life because he doesn't have to be hovering over his business." And she was just so surprised at the dramatic outcome in such a short period of time. Because what happens with RIM is it is very quick and effective. So what we're talking about here is memories definitely can be kaleidoscopic, I should say. And when we are regenerating new memory, that it can it's calling from our unconscious perception of what happened. It doesn't matter if it's real or not, because we're not using this as something to decide whether we're going to sue somebody or not. This is only for healing. I don't know if anybody has any comments about that from the crowd, or Mike, if you do, you look like you would like to say something.
I suspect that this filmmaker probably has never gone to therapy to heal that wound, and never would have talked to a business coach about this issue because the root cause was unknown. And so that, I don't know if you'd call that a small t trauma. It's an event that most people wouldn't think of that I need to work on. It's just a memory he didn't even remember until
it's totally forgotten. It's totally forgotten. Yeah. It's in, it's
this answers some of the questions that were asked earlier today. Like, how do you know what trauma to work on? It's like, well, why are we deciding that when we don't know and it's impossible to know? It's what's present. So the body sensing, that leveraging body awareness and spontaneous imagination brought it forth. And now you know. And so it's something that you may have never worked on. And it was the biggest root cause of that particular issue. So a single session resolves something that you could have been talking about for years or never healing for years, and or always thinking that he just can't, and whatever it was that he was thinking, it doesn't helpful.
Yeah, right? Yeah.
So we have to get beneath the logic.
Right. Mm-hmm. Exactly right. And that emotional memory is not about what's factual.
Right.
It's about what's perceived, how we perceive it. Yeah. That's why trauma is anything that feels traumatizing is a trauma for us, but somebody else might not find it traumatizing. So it's all contextual. RIM is very contextual. It's so nonlinear, and it's all the 50 shades of gray between black and white, because that's what emotion is. So that's what we do in terms of RIM.
So Dr. Deb, there's a question in the chat of, well, what do you say to clients when they're like, the image coming up, it's like, it's not real, it's not accurate, I feel like I'm just making it up?
Oh, yes, I would say, well, it's coming through imagination, so it doesn't matter. You can just pretend it's real, because so if you're making it up, it doesn't matter. Right. You're not intellectually making it up. You are, because you're getting an image. An image doesn't come from the thinking mind, it comes from the emotional mind.
And then to piggyback on that, the next question is, well, what if the person's body awareness is very, very low?
Yeah, that can happen. And sometimes, we're working into that gradually, and it grows stronger and stronger the more that you use it.
Yeah. And that's something we measure. Coco, you remember in the beginning of the classes when we do the EOS quiz, and measuring that, we see that going up just in the course of a 4-day class. Or 4 or 5 days together, right? When we measure body awareness and people self-rate on that, and we see it begins to skyrocket for a lot of people who think they don't, and it did for me. I remember my very first session as a client, and Dr. Deb, you asking me what I was sensing in my body, and my answer was nothing. It's just totally relaxed. And so rather than fight with that, I'm pretty sure you said, so just notice that calm, relaxed feeling in your body. It's like allowing the client to be right. They discover that they're good at it when they thought they weren't. And 5 minutes later, they're very deep, or maybe it's 20 minutes later, they're very deep. Maybe it's multiple sessions, but clients, this is about increasing their intuitive sensing and giving them access to what they think they don't have access to. And if we make it like we're teaching them how to do that, then there's resistance, and they have to go into battle about, well, they can't, and it's too hard. I tried meditating, or I don't do visions. And people are always telling me that, well, there's no color to it, but it's purple. or, well, it doesn't have a shape, it's just an egg, or something like that. And so they're so convinced they can't do it, and they're doing it. And so it doesn't really matter. We just make them
So,
right.
yeah,
Mhm.
yeah, because there are three channels of receiving information: visual, auditory, and kinesthetic, which is felt sense or body awareness. And people are used to using the word visualization, thinking about visualization as a primary way of using imagery. But visualization is when you're attempting to visualize something specific. And that's very different than what we're doing in RIM. We're really having spontaneous imagination present images that are coming from within. So it's not visualization, because people who are not visual really balk when somebody says, let's have a visualization now, because they don't sense through the primary channel of visual. So all of those channels work effectively. None of them are better than another. And the more that you use those channels, the better they get. They all start working together. So you have multi-sensory experience, which is really important, because when it becomes multisensory, we're actually accessing the regenerative aspect of REM. The more sensory it is, because that means it's less intellectual. So we're really shifting from thinking into sensing. And if sensing comes in feeling, it can be feeling as well. But it's really valuable to make that shift, because now we're using a whole different medium to do the healing.